Since the confines of our childhood, shadows sometimes visit us, disguised as nightmares or irrational fears. But what if these shadows are real? What if the figures that inhabit the threshold of our sleep are visitors from a distant place, with purposes we can barely comprehend? For one man in Brazil, specifically in the state of Bahia, these questions are not theoretical. They are the essence of a life marked by encounters that defy logic and have forever redefined his path. He is Ed Meireles, and his journey, which has largely unfolded in the Bahia region, is a disturbing testimony of abductions and sightings that weave a chilling narrative between our world and the unknown. Prepare to delve into a story where childhood is haunted, youth is a relentless search, and adulthood is a fight for the truth. Born in the mid-70s into a home where military discipline dictated the rules, Ed Meireles grew up under the shadow of his father, an officer in the general staff of the Brazilian Armed Forces. From a young age, he was trained in the art of war, molded to follow a predetermined path. But something inside him resisted, something that pulled him away from convention, to question, to seek answers beyond history books and established beliefs. This rebelliousness, this yearning for something more, he would come to understand, was not innate, but rather a direct consequence of terrifying experiences that haunted him since his earliest years in Bahia. He remembers, with cold, disturbing clarity, being restrained, wrists and ankles immobilized on something resembling a surgical table. Around him, figures hovered in the gloom, 4 to 6 humanoid beings, short, with gray skin, disproportionately large heads, and vast, emotionless black eyes. They were the Greys, entities now sadly famous in ufological accounts. They examined him with clinical coldness, as if he were merely a specimen to be studied. In the corner of the room, other humanoids, noticeably taller, standing over 6 feet 6 inches, more than 2 meters, seemed to supervise the process. Long, thin arms, delicate hands, but an imposing presence. Ed perceived that they communicated, not by voice, but by a kind of silent telepathy that resonated directly in his mind. The examinations proceeded methodically, without any demonstration of empathy or concern for his discomfort. He was treated like a disposable object, with no intrinsic value beyond what they could extract from his body. Although Ed claims not to feel physical pain during the procedures, the situation was one of pure desperation. Witnessing the manipulation of his own body, the violation of his form, was a psychological torment, and then the abrupt transition. Suddenly, he was back in his bed, heart pounding, body soaked in cold sweat, and the pain. Intense pain in his wrists and ankles, as if the restraints had left real marks. But most disturbing was the internal pain in his organs, a sensation of having been punctured or forcibly rearranged. It was a pain so vivid, so real, that he knew in his child's soul that this could not be just a nightmare. It was something that had actually happened, for real. These experiences repeated, relentless, throughout his childhood and adolescence, occurring between 10 and 15 times a year. The scene was generally the same, but over time, he began to notice details. The room wasn't just a place, but rather an environment that seemed like a high-tech surgical center, impeccably equipped. Amidst the coldness and indifference of the Greys and the taller beings, a new element emerged during Ed's adolescence, the occasional presence of a being with a feminine appearance. This entity had a softer, more delicate gaze and always fixed her eyes on Ed's. She transmitted a sense of calm, a silent, mental message: "We don't want to hurt you. Don't resist. The quieter you stay, the better it will be." In some inexplicable way, Ed felt that this feminine figure was a kind of mother, a protector amidst that constant violation. He trusted her more, as she seemed to show some vestige of feeling, something absent in the other beings, who saw him only as an object of study, without caring about his life or suffering. Despite this small relief, the weight of those experiences was crushing. Ed tried to share his torments with friends, seeking understanding, but found only disbelief. It was unbearably difficult to carry this burden alone, without anyone to guide him or believe him. Bedtime became a ritual of anxiety. He knew that as soon as he fell asleep, the signs would come, announcing that the terrible experience would repeat. Trying to resist, to fight sleep, only made things worse. When the abduction happened, it was more brutal, and the pains upon waking were even more intense. But Ed's experiences were not limited to the veil of night. At 15, the ufological reality burst into his life under the sun, against the backdrop of the paradisiacal Itaparica Island, Bahia. He was exploring the Alto do Morro das Mangueiras hilltop with his brother and sister-in-law to watch the sunset. The tranquility of the evening was violently shattered by a deafening roar. The ground trembled beneath their feet like a small earthquake. Turning towards the sound, they witnessed something that defied all comprehension. A massive object, gray in color, emerged from the mountainside and hovered over them. Clearly, this did not belong to this world. It was colossal, the size of an entire neighborhood, and its shape was irregular, with strange protrusions and fittings on its sides. It wasn't the traditional flying saucer from magazines. It was something different, something both organic and technological. Ed, his brother, and sister-in-law were frozen, in shock, as the gigantic craft hovered above them. They could discern details before it silently moved away and disappeared into the sky. Ed claims that hundreds of people in the region witnessed that monumental event, but fear and the lack of means to document something so unbelievable led to silence prevailing. The subject was suppressed by the fear of ridicule and disbelief. Ed and his brother returned home, exchanging stunned glances, but they too, lacking proof, kept the secret. This daylight sighting, added to the nocturnal abductions that became more frequent, occurring 5 to 6 times a year, ignited a flame of rebellion in Ed. He could no longer ignore the reality that haunted him. He decided he needed answers, an explanation for all of it. Inventing camping trips for his parents, Ed began venturing into Chapada Diamantina, a mystical and well-known region in Bahia, with a group of friends. Amidst the trails and waterfalls, camping under the stars, he found something unexpected. Local residents with equally fascinating and disturbing stories. Accounts of orb sightings and contact with strange beings were common. These people described spectacular experiences, but also the fear and frustration of not being taken seriously by the authorities. They were labeled as tellers of cultural stories, or worse, as people under the effect of hallucinogens. They were silenced, induced to feel shame. Ed noticed a striking similarity between some of the abduction experiences told by those residents and his own. This is how he discovered that Chapada Diamantina was an epicenter of inexplicable ufological activity. Inspired and determined, Ed and his friends joined forces, beginning to investigate these cases on their own. This initiative culminated in the creation of the UFO Bahia groups, later known as GPU Ufological Research and Expeditions Group and GPTA Advanced Extra-Technological Research Group, based in Bahia. In adulthood, Ed Meireles found landscaping in Salvador, Bahia, a means of livelihood that allowed him to dedicate his time and resources to his true passion, field ufological investigation. Over time, he developed improved recording techniques and acquired more sophisticated equipment. He maintained research groups formed by friends, colleagues, and enthusiasts who followed him online, all united by the search for truth. There were moments of frustration, years when trips and expeditions, made with the hope of more palpable contact, resulted in nothing. But persistence was rewarded in February 2011. On a trail in Chapada Diamantina, Ed had an encounter that would change the game. He came across a probe-type UFO and managed to photograph the object in images that, to this day, are considered some of the clearest and most convincing images of a UFO ever captured. This specific encounter, detailed and analyzed, which occurred in Bahia, was the subject of a full video here on the channel. Despite his double life as a landscaper and investigator in Bahia, Ed claims that his discoveries and experiences have placed him in a position of risk. He alleges that there is a constant attempt by government entities to silence him and discredit his stories. He reports visits from agents, searches of his home, and those of friends and family, all to prevent him from spreading the truth that we live in a world where ufological reality is systematically hidden from the public, masked by the media and governments, and the abductions. The experiences that have haunted him since childhood still occur, although less frequently, 2 to 3 times a year. The surgical room, the gray beings, the tall humanoids, the scene repeats. Over the years, Ed claims to have developed a kind of resignation. He has learned to close his eyes, to wait for it all to end, to await the moment he will be returned to his bed. But even accustomed to the terrible routine, the pain upon waking, the feeling of having been violated still persists, a physical reminder that these are not mere memories, but real events that continue to happen. The story of Ed Meireles, unfolding in the heart of Bahia, Brazil, forces us to confront possibilities that most prefer to ignore. What truly happens in the shadows of the night? Are non-human intelligences visiting us, conducting experiments in secret? And if so, why? And what does Ed's story tell us about how society and authorities deal with the unknown, with the inexplicable? Ed chose to transform his terrifying experiences into a search for answers, becoming one of Brazil's most persistent ufological investigators. His journey, marked by pain, fear, and frustration, is also a journey of courage and determination in the face of the unknown and disbelief. If you like this video and want YouTube to show it to more people interested in this fascinating topic, don't forget to leave your like, eh? It's a simple, free action, but it makes a huge difference for the channel and helps us reach more and more people. Subscribe also so you don't miss the next episodes, and consider becoming a member to get access to exclusive content and support the channel directly, or use the thanks tool for a one-time contribution. Thank you for being with us in this exploration of the universe's mysteries. Until the next alien cases.